CO, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Brad Wagnon with Community Culture Outreach. Most of y'all know me. We're going to get started with our 2020, 22. I don't know what year it is. 2022 still feels like 2020. Grant kickoff right now. And the first person that I'm going to hand you over to is Deputy Principal Chief Brian Warner for welcoming prayer and maybe a few words. Deputy.
Yes, CO to God. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, CCO, and thank you, Chief, for allowing us to take this time today to be here. I know, it's a time of great anxiety for many all around, but I hope that CCO, Cherokee Nation, and the administration that we can be a beacon of some consistency. Be a group of people that CCO has been for such times like this that comes through in the pinch. And we appreciate each and every community group that's been out there, that's been with us on the front lines and being community minded members as Cherokees always are. Our community is our family, and our family is everything. And the things that we go and do today and tomorrow, we're planning for those future generations. I was today in Oklahoma City talking with a group of business leaders and other people about all the wonderful things that we can do if we're always better together, but not just better together, but you have to work together. And I think that's a sentiment that Chief Hoskin has put out, not just here in Indian country, but all across the globe, really. And so very thankful for everyone today, and excited and hoping that CCO can help bring those anxiety levels down, and we can get some good things going out there and continue to do what we do best, which is share our family, share our culture, and share our beliefs. So if everyone will today, bow with me and we'll go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day, Lord, and we thank you for the fellowship and the time that you have given each of us. Lord, your blessings, Lord, even the ones that may go unnoticed, Lord, we're so thankful for everything, Lord. And we know that we are not deserving, but yet you are always there for each of us, Lord, and for each of our communities. Lord, we ask that you lift us up. We ask for a healing, Lord, for all those ailments that we have, Lord, not just in our own bodies, but across the land, Lord. We ask that you help us to remember that spirit of God Doogie that is in each of us as we go on and do our Cherokee ways and do great things in these communities. But it is in your name that we do these things in, Lord. It is your will, it is your way that I ask that you fill our vessels with. Fill our vessels also with the fruit of the Spirit, Lord. And just help us to be mindful of the grace and mercy that you give us freely, that it is for us to be that we are blessed to be a blessing, and that we give that grace and mercy to those of brothers and sisters of ours. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now back to you, Brad.
Hello, Deputy Chief Warner. Now I want to hand our program over to Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. for some welcome and some words. Hello, Chief.
CO Brad, thank you, everyone. I'm excited about the opportunities in the new fiscal year as we kick off the grant season. CCO does a great deal to support our communities, but of course it starts with the communities, and your participation in this meeting just reemphasizes what sort of grassroots activity there is out across the Cherokee Nation. I mean, we saw it when we had the CCO conference recently. We see it when we're out in the communities. The Deputy Chief and I have visited communities, even though it's difficult to do during COVID, on some really key projects lately. So if you look at CCO's normal budget, it does a great deal to support you in terms of your capacity building and also capital projects. But under the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act that we worked with the council on in 2019, we know we're in the midst of year two, closing out year two, of $7 million towards repairing, remodeling buildings, achieving some energy efficiency goals, and some solar projects. And so we've been visiting some of the solar projects. We visited one in Rogers County recently. You can go across our reservation and you can see your community organizations doing some exciting things. Some of it's been creating outdoor venues so that you can more safely meet as we deal with COVID. But of course, those assets are going to serve you a long time. So we've loved some of the projects we've seen in terms of outdoor space. We've seen a lot of other projects, big and small, that's helped with energy efficiency, not just the high-end solar, but a lot of just common sense things that you would do for your home that you're able to do for your buildings. So we're proud of that. We're excited in particular about some of the federal funding opportunities we have coming up. Now, with federal funds, particularly the American Rescue Plan Act funds, we have an overall plan with what we'd like to do with those funds, but it was always to be flexible from the beginning. So at the beginning of the summer, Deputy Chief and I sent a plan to the council as kind of an overall framework so we could start thinking about how to plan for a significant amount of federal dollars. A portion of that, and I think it's to the tune of nearly $20 million, will go to a lot of community efforts, not exclusively CCO projects, but a number of CCO projects and a number of opportunities to work with nonprofits, your organizations, and others across the reservation, so we can really start building up our communities even more than we already are. But this will include some building projects. And so as they talk this evening about some of the normal capital projects under Community Works and the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act, those opportunities are going to be there. But you'll probably also see us planning and working in some communities on some bigger projects where, for example, Kenwood. Kenwood has a community building. We've looked at that as a need to replace that building. But then we started to think about what we need to do in terms of Head Start in the Kenwood community. And then we started thinking about, well, what about space for physical wellness? And so some communities will have multi-purpose facilities that serve multiple programs, including community organizations, but it's a much bigger project. So it'll be one that's more managed by the Cherokee Nation. But the Kenwood model is a good example of how I think things should work. We met with the Kenwood organization over a number of meetings to sort of figure out what the local needs were and how design ought to look. And so to the extent we have some of these bigger projects in your area, we want to kind of replicate that model where we come in and listen and not come in and say, this is what it's going to be. But on the other grant programs, the ones you'll talk about tonight, it'll take the more traditional form of, you all come up with the idea, come to CCO, apply, and we'll do our level best to fund those activities. But overall, I'm very excited about these opportunities we have to invest in our communities. It's always been very important to me and our deputy chief. We think and talk a lot about particularly the rural areas where there's not a lot of other partners to come in and help. There's you all that are in the community, and that's indispensable. And then we need to be there to support what you're doing. And I think in the coming years, you're going to see that happen more and more because we have not only the resources to do it, but we have great leadership. And that includes our council that's been very supportive of these efforts and have encouraged the deputy chief and I to keep doing more again at this grassroots level. So I want to thank you all for your time and attention, your dedication to this important mission. Finally, let me make a brief comment about the COVID restrictions that we've just deemed to be necessary. It's a difficult time. We've all had to curtail our activities in the name of public health. It is something that I don't take lightly in terms of formulating restrictions. I do it based on feedback, though, from people that are far more expert than me in the area of public health. That's public health experts. That's what I think most political leaders in this country ought to do, in my opinion, is lean first on the science and ultimately develop the policies, and then the buck stops with the person at the top. And reasonable people can disagree about this restriction or that, but just know that the decisions are always born of a collaborative discussion within the administration, principally starting, though, with people who are experts on infectious disease and how we control the spread. We know that masks work. We know that vaccines work. That's why you see us pushing that. We know that mass gatherings, particularly indoors, are simply dangerous right now, and we see the spread. And so that's the reason that from time to time we have changed, the restrictions. And we know that impacts your communities, though. We know it impacts what you want to do to raise money, for example, to keep doing what you're doing. It comes at a cost in terms of our social interaction. We know that. And it really weighs on me heavily, the idea that we're missing that. But I do want to say this. There has been some rhetoric, and I think it's across the country, that's been particularly charged. It's fine to have robust political debates about the subject of COVID. We ought to. We're a free country, and Cherokee Nation is a free society. I think we're as robust as democracy as you'd ever seen. I mean, just go out and look at Facebook. We're a robust democracy in which people feel free to speak their mind. And I think that's one of the great things about Cherokee Nation. But I feel like I'm among friends here. And I think I'm among people who take their leadership responsibilities very serious. When it comes to debates and disagreements about COVID restrictions that elevate to the point of political violence, that's where, it's not about me. It's about whether we're a society that resolves things by leaning on violence, or whether we resolve things by debating things vigorously and figuring out what the best move is. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention this, because even among a community leader, this kind of statement was made on social media. And it said that I've used COVID as a cloak to keep us from gathering in our communities and not communicate with each other. And that in the old days, the warriors would have assassinated me. Now, I hate to bring a weighty topic like this into this meeting that ought to be very much about optimism and building the future. But I think we've got a rare opportunity to talk about this, not to dominate this meeting with it, but to think something about it. I signed up for a political job, and I will take the political hits all day long, because that's our democracy. I believe in public service. I believe I ought to continually try to earn my right to be your chief and do my best to do the job. I'm not concerned about the politics. I'm concerned about violence in our society. I'm concerned about somebody reading a comment like that and injuring one of my staff members, or taking out someone else, hurting a family member. I mean, those are things that are important to all Cherokees. And so what I would ask you to do as community leaders is, number one, recognize that that statement was actually written by a community leader. But number two is, collectively, I don't believe you all see the world that way. And I think we can exercise some individual leadership as community leaders by not necessarily agreeing with me on particular COVID protocols, but helping cool the rhetoric when it comes to disagreements about what we should do about COVID. At the end of the day, we're all just trying to survive, aren't we? We're all trying to do our best. We're all trying to make sure that when we get out of this, we can get back to the kind of life we all want, where we're engaging socially. We have vibrant Cherokee communities. We continue to work on that. But I would ask for your help. And again, I hate, Kevin, to bring the meeting down on such a difficult topic, but it's weighed on me. And even the chief has things weigh on him occasionally. And I feel like the issue of political violence is one we don't need in the Cherokee Nation. We need to do something about it if it's a problem. And anytime a community leader would use that kind of rhetoric, well, it's a concern. And in fact, it's such a concern that our ability to engage with a community group that believed in that sort of thing just would be impossible. But I don't think any community group involved with CCO really sees the world that way. But we do need to talk about it, I think, at some point. So I wanted to raise that. But back to the main topic, is we've got an exciting opportunity here in the new fiscal year to make a big impact in your community. But it absolutely starts with the community leaders. So you have my admiration always. Whatever.
Well, Chief Hoskin, I appreciate the words, and appreciate everything that you do for Cherokee Nation and your constant support of communities and CCO as a department. Which, thank you very much. All right, right now I'm going to introduce Special Projects Officer for Cherokee Nation Emergency Management, Jody Rainwater. She's got a few words to talk to you about an important opportunity that they have to get your feedback directly from you. Jody.
I'm Jody Rainwater. I'm currently the Hazard Mitigation Plan for the Tribes Liaison here at Emergency Management. And we're in the process of updating our current Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's a living document. We already have, as a tribe, have a Hazard Mitigation Plan, but it is to be updated every 5 years and to maintain eligibility for FEMA programs. Mitigation planning is the process used by state, tribal, and local leaders to understand risk from natural hazards and develop long-term goals. And that will reduce the impacts of future events on our people, property, and the environment around us. We want to include our Cherokee communities and our elders' experience with natural disasters that they've encountered, and input on potential hazards in the future. Your assistance is greatly appreciated to help us with those. And Brad will be sending out a community feedback survey to all the communities to better help us collect this type of information for our plan update. And thank you for your time, and we value your partnership.
Will do, Jody. Appreciate it. I'll be sending out those surveys very soon, probably tonight before I go. And just want to say we've got 70 people here, which is a great number. We appreciate your time. Want to give a welcome to some other dignitaries and tribal counselors that we have here. We have Secretary of State Tina Glory Jordan with us. I'll say hello to her for being here with us. And we also have Tribal Counselor Rex Jordan with us tonight. Just hello for spending some time with us this evening. All right, it's time for the main event, and for us to talk about our upcoming grant year. And I'm going to hand it over first to Savannah Smith to discuss the new org application and the COTTA application. And I think you'll be excited about some of the news that she has to share with you about the COTTA application if you are returning grantee. So Savannah, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Hope you all are doing well. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off here talking about our new organization grant application. Let me go ahead and share my screen. This one here. All right. So, new org. This application here is going to be for all of the new organizations. So organizations that have never been funded with CCO before, this here is for you guys. So who is eligible for this? Organizations residing within the Cherokee Nation Reservation. They have to be operated by a 51% or greater Cherokee Nation Citizen Board of Directors, must be a formally organized nonprofit organization, and you must show a desire to work with CCO and CCO programs. So as mentioned previously, this is for brand new organizations or organizations new to working with COTTA. Funded organizations are expected to follow Cherokee Nation public health and CDC guidelines for COVID-19. Not doing so may result in eligibility or suspension of funding. So some of the projects that we can fund for your organization, computer software, technology, additional training not provided by COTTA, office supplies, costs to achieve your 501c3 status. We have, helped several organizations, obtain this, implement or maintain your programs, fundraising equipment. So popcorn machines, 10% for overhead, 5% for annual meal. Subawards for this new org grant is will be up to $3,000. Other projects as approved by CCO staff. So some of the training that's provided, me and Vince, Brad, we do provide training over leadership development, organizational development, program development, collaboration and community engagement, evaluation and effectiveness. So we do hold, currently we are doing trainings the last Tuesday of every month. We didn't do one this month just because this is it here, the kickoff. So But once we get started in the year, last Tuesday of the month, we hold trainings. We're also available for one-on-one training. So if your organization has something specific that they, just want a little bit more information on, we would be happy to meet with you over Zoom. Or if you would like to come to our offices, we do have that training available. So some of the required documents for this application, you have to have a completed new org application, a projected budget for the upcoming year, your organization bylaws. They must state the organization is operated by 51% or more Cherokee Nation citizens. Tribal membership cards, blue cards, or your Cherokee Nation photo ID will work, of your elected board members. Complete contact information for all elected board members, and then a list of meeting dates, times, and place for the upcoming year. In addition to that, we also have to have a signed Cherokee Nation W-9. So this right here is just an example of what the budget table will look like. So as you can see in box A here, supplies and materials, you would just put over here to the right, the amount that you're needing. And then you can also itemize what exactly it is that is your supplies and materials. And then you'll just total it here at the bottom. As stated before, new orgs only get up to $3,000. So you'll definitely want to keep it right below that. So here, this is another part of the application, budget form summary. Similar to the previous slide, you'll just put your amounts here, supplies, materials, equipment. If you use any type of contracted services, you would put an amount here. And you don't have to, obviously you wouldn't be filling every line. It's just whatever is needed. Once again, not totaling over 3,000. Funds are for capacity building only. They cannot be used for direct services to individuals or families. Funds can also not be used to support inherently religious activities. So this right here is a budget narrative. So this is just for us to be able to see. So if you needed the Microsoft Office software, you'll put exactly what you're going to be getting with this software and then what you're going to be using it for. So example here, this is needed to be installed on the 2 new Office computers we are also asking for. And then also, just a description letting us know how is this going to benefit you. It will allow us to complete tasks to expand services. So this right here just lets us know on each item or supply that you're needing, what you're going to be using it for specifically. Once again, totals at the bottom. So this right here is just an example of some bids. So we do encourage you to, shop around a little bit. Don't just jump at the first computer you Google or that you find on Best Buy or wherever you go. Look around, and then once you have found, what you're wanting, you will send this in to us. And this is kind of what it would, it would look like. You would just send in the price and the item that you're wanting. So a couple things to remember. If it's over $500, you have to send quotes from 2 or 3 sources. So as mentioned in the previous slides, you could get one from Amazon, from Best Buy, shop around. No direct supplies. So anything you're buying to give to somebody else is not allowed. So submitting this grant, email submission is probably the #1 way we would love to be able to receive your application. It needs to be submitted in Microsoft Word, Excel, or Adobe. You need to have your legal name of your organization in the subject line. All documents need to be scanned in and sent as one attachment. So please don't scan page 1, page 2, page 3, and then we have 20 documents that we have to open. So if you can, please send it in as one. And you will email all of this to cco-grants@cherokee.org. Once we receive it, we will let you know. You'll just get an email back from me, Vince, or Brad on that. There is no deadline for submission for new orgs. Grant will be funded as long as the funds are available. No hand-carried submissions will be accepted. All right, so that was all for new orgs, okay? Now we're gonna move into the new and improved COTTA grant application. So this right here is gonna be for all of the returning organizations that have been on COTTA before. You guys are gonna be really, really happy with this, as Brad mentioned. I'm pretty excited about getting to share it with you. I'm glad that they've given me this opportunity. All right, so same thing on who's eligible. As mentioned in the new org, 51 plus Cherokee Nation citizen on board directors, nonprofit organization. And as mentioned before, funded organizations are expected to follow Cherokee Nation public health and CDC guidelines for COVID-19. So returning grantees. So just a couple things to remember. No remaining funds from previous year's grant. So if you have not turned in your receipts from last year, you will need to turn those in to us so we can close you guys out. If you have any funds that are left over, we will not be able to fund you until you have closed out your application. So if you've not gotten those in, please turn those in to us. Promptness and accuracy in reporting previous grants. Satisfactory and on-time completion of previous projects. And then a desire to continue working with CCO and all of its programs. You know, our organizations have really stepped up this past year with COVID hitting, and we really appreciate all of you guys that have helped with the food drive and handing out all of that food distribution. So some of the eligible projects, as mentioned, a lot of these were in the new org app as well. Computer software technology, additional training, the cost to achieve 501c3 status. And in addition to all of that, up to $1,000 to visit an at-large sister community. Other project as approved by CCO staff. Subawards for returning COTTA organizations that were on COTTA previously are eligible for up to $7,500. So this right here is the exciting part, guys. All right, so your required documents for the application. We need a completed COTTA app. And then we just need your Cherokee Nation W-9. That's it. So in the application, it's 1 page, 2 page, maybe, I think it's 2 pages max. You will have to have a completed list of purchases with your approximate prices in your budget sheet. So the budget sheet and the summary will be included. If you run out of room, you can add a sheet. Please be sure to mark whether you operate a Cherokee Nation community building. Also, this isn't a required attachment, but if your board has changed and maybe you have some new members, then you have maybe people who've dropped off, or just send us an updated list of your members with their tribal IDs. And you can just scan that in with your application. But if nothing has changed, then you don't have to worry about sending that in. All you have to send in is your COTTA app and then a W-9. That's the only attachment. Everything else that you need will be in the application. Like this right here. So the budget form summary will need exactly what you're needing for your supplies, materials, equipment, all of that, not to exceed $7,500. And then, as mentioned before, oh well, there's a, oh sorry, okay. Just a little detailed, of what you're needing. So if your equipment is $3,600, what is that? That's costing $3,600. So put in your printer and whatever the items are. So here's the example of some, for all of you returning are familiar with this. So whenever you submit your receipts for the month, sending in what you've purchased. So a couple more things. 2 budget modifications are allowable. So if something happened, you had to change something, and you decided that you don't want to get the printer, you're going to hold off, just let us know. So you're allowed 2 budget modifications, and once again, no direct supplies. Well, that's more than a couple of things. So a few things, and no construction. So if you guys have any questions about that, just let us know. Grant submission. Once again, as mentioned previously, we're all about getting the emails. Submit it in Microsoft Word, Excel, or Adobe. And you will just scan all of this in as one attachment and send to cco-grants@cherokee.org. We will acknowledge the receipt. Now for returning COTTA applicants, there is a deadline. The deadline for submission is going to be Friday, November 5th, 2021 by 5:00 p.m. So make sure you get your application in by then. No hand carried submissions will be accepted. All right, so I think that is all I have on my end. If you guys have any questions, please reach out, me, Brad, and Vince. And if you have any questions about your documents, I know it's crazy. You're not attaching 11 different things. So if you need any help though, just let us know. And now I'm going to hand it over to Vince.
Thank you, Savannah. And yes, we streamlined the COTTA application, and we are going to talk about the community work application. And yes, you do need all of the attachments on this one. Now, the community work application is something that I'm really glad to be a part of, because a lot of organizations over the few years that I've been here have taken advantage of this and have really been able to do some good out there in their communities. So here is the community work grant. So who is eligible? Well, it's organizations within the Cherokee Reservation, 51% or more Cherokee Nation citizens as your board of directors, who have worked with COTTA for a minimum of 2 years and shown satisfactory organization and project management capability. Now, when we say worked with COTTA for 2 years, we're talking about organizations that have gone through the new organization app and as well as a COTTA cycle. So we're talking about those organizations that we have worked with for at least 2 years in the past. So you must be a formally organized nonprofit organization. You must show a desire to continue working with CCO and the CCO programs. You can continue working with COTTA at the same time, working with the volunteer program and our cultural outreach. And once again, funded organizations are expected to follow Cherokee Nation public health and CDC guidelines for COVID-19. Not doing so may result in ineligibility or suspension of funding. If you are returning, if you have been previously funded for community work and you are returning, these are some of the things that we look at. We look at the promptness and accuracy in the reporting, previous projects that you're doing. Are they satisfactory? Are they on time? There are no more than one completed major project or new construction in the last 5 years. And we look to see if you still have a desire to continue working with CCO and all of its programs. Eligible projects, community purpose and support, community support. Has to be controlled by the Cherokee Community Organization. May not put Cherokee Nation in a relationship with another government. So what we mean by this is we don't work on buildings that the city may own or a county may own or the state may own. We work on buildings, for the Cherokee community. Some of the types of projects that we have are community buildings, parks, cultural historic sites, community building rehab, community service site for special populations, economic development for nonprofit community-owned enterprise. Move on here. So one thing, the buildings must be built and land leased from the Cherokee Nation. So if there's any concerns or issues with this, you feel free to contact our director, Kevin Stretch, and he can discuss that with you. You must have adequate land for space, water, sanitation, and parking. Whenever we're looking at new community buildings, one thing that we really recommend is each organization have about 3 acres of land. So this will give room for parking and all this stuff. The site must pass all DEQ requirements. A lot of times we have Cherokee Nation Water and Sanitation come out there, and sometimes they do a perk test for septic and such as that. And must have a completed and successful review from Cherokee Nation's environmental department. And you must have 2 to 3 bids. Now we do this to show us that you as an organization have done your due diligence and actively looking for bids, as well as seeing if the organization is actually getting competitive prices for the bids. And all contracts must be approved by CCO prior to the beginning. So no work will start until all contracts are approved by our office. So here's all of the attachments. So we need a completed community work organization. We need detailed drawings and the plans of projects with the bids for material and labor, a Cherokee Nation lease agreement, an organizational budget, a financial statement for the most recent year completed, and we also require a bank statement showing separate or a sub-account for community work funds. Proof of the organization's nonprofit status, and a current list of all board members with copies of tribal membership cards and photo IDs and full contact information. We need a signed Cherokee Nation W-9, a copy of the signed and up-to-date organizational bylaws, a copy of the most recent state, that would be the 512E, and federal tax return. It's usually the 990. A letter of support from our director, the CCO director, also a letter of support from your tribal counselor, and a letter of support from some community partners that your organization has worked with in the past, and a notarized copy of your board meeting dates for the next calendar year. This is the same thing that you have to file with your county every year. So a copy of that has been notarized. Submitting the grant is the same. Email submission, we prefer it in Microsoft Word, Excel, or Adobe. The legal name of the organization in the subject line. Scan all documents and send as one attachment. Now, we do understand that this is a larger grant, so there's probably a little bit more paperwork involved. And there are times whenever you can't get everything as one attachment, and that is fine. But for to make things a little bit easier on everybody else, if you can get it as one attachment, scanned as one attachment, that will help tremendously. And send one email to cco-grants@cherokee.org, and we will acknowledge it with the receipt of an email. Now, there is no deadline for submissions, but funds are limited on a first come and first served basis. And once again, there are no hand-carried submissions that will be accepted. So unfortunately, you can't come by the office with a paper copy of your grant application and drop it off. We can't accept it like that. So no hand-carried submissions will be accepted. So with that, some things haven't really changed with the community work grant, but as I've said before, there are a lot of things I've seen in the past that communities have actually done some good in their communities, and I'm actually really proud to be a part of that, to help with that. And so if you're out there, you know, apply for the community work grant, and maybe we can help your organization continue to thrive and do good things that are out there. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brad Wagner, and he's going to talk to you about the Sustainable Communities Grants. Brad?
All right, I'm going to be speaking with you about the Sustainable Communities Grant. And we'll have a time of question and answer that you can direct, you know, questions toward me and Vince and Savannah and Kevin about different things. We'll trade off on that depending on who knows the answer. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Be nice if I would get it to the correct slide. Let's see here. Here we are. There we go. Nope, that's not it. One sec. I'm gonna have to close something out. Should be good at this Zoom thing by now, shouldn't I? Here we go. All right. All right, so I'm going to be talking about the Sustainable Communities Act grants. These is funding that was awarded to us from the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act. And this is for renovation of community buildings to make them more energy efficient, as well as other projects that are approved by CCO. So we've had a little bit of leeway in what we can do with these, and this has greatly increased our ability to renovate and build community organizations, and it's a very much needed thing. So we're going to get started with this. It's pretty much the same as the community work, except there's only certain things that this can be used for. As far as who is eligible, organizations within the reservation that operate a Cherokee community building must be a formally not organized nonprofit and must show desire to continue working with CCO and our programs. Again, funded organizations, those that have buildings, are expected to follow Cherokee Nation public health and CDC guidelines for COVID-19. Not doing so may result in ineligibility or suspension of funding for this grant. My suggestion was, if you are unsure whether or not you are eligible for this grant, to contact us at cco-grants@cherokee.org. Let us know what organization you're with, and we will discuss it with you, make contact with you. So eligible projects. Eligible projects are for buildings that are built and leased on land leased from the Cherokee Nation. So Cherokee Nation community buildings, projects that increase the efficiency and sustainability of Cherokee community buildings. Some examples: the replacement of appliances, HVAC systems, lighting, doors, windows for new, more efficient versions. So replacing any of those things that are more than 10 or 12 years old, you're going to get new, better efficiency out of that equipment. Additional insulation and weatherproofing, and green energy projects. Most of the energy projects that we have done have been solar projects. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a bit. If you're unsure, again, if your project that you're wanting to do qualifies, just please send us an email. Email submission, it's Microsoft Word, Excel, or Adobe. Legal name of the organization. Scan all documents and send as one attachment to cco-grants@cherokee.org, and we will acknowledge the receipt of your email. Again, there is no deadline for the submission, but funds are limited. Will not accept any hand-carried submissions. And I just want to talk about that for a second. We've said that on all of these grants. One reason is obviously COVID precautions. We're trying to limit the number of people in the office at one time. So we don't want a bunch of hand-carried submissions coming in on the day of the deadline. And we also have to have a receipt, the time that it was received. We have had occasions where somebody said they dropped off an application here at the office and one of us was not here and we never found it. So if you send an email, that email shows whether or not it was delivered. It shows what date and time it was sent. So we can see that when we look at the email, and that it just clears up a whole lot of confusion about whether or not a grant application was turned in. And for the COTTA grant, whether it was turned in on time. So that's the reason we're saying no hand-carried submissions. The things that are required for the sustainability grant are the same things that are required for the community work grant. So all those attachments apply there as well. The one thing I want to talk about is the solar power projects. Cherokee Nation Natural Resources is handling the solar power projects. And so all you need to do on if you want solar added to your building is you need to note that in your application. You don't have to get bids on the solar part. You just need to get bids on all the other stuff, and Cherokee Nation Natural Resources will pass your community building's name on to them, and they will contact you about a solar project if we have the funds to do so. All right, I'm going to actually turn this over to Kevin real quick, and then we will do questions. So it's Kevin Stretch, Director of CCO.
I'm happy to be here, and I was going to talk to you a little bit about the grants. First of all, welcome. We appreciate it. I know that we here at CCO are in our offices, and apparently Jody was on a beach in Hawaii. So I'm a little bit jealous there where she's taking this remote distancing thing a little bit farther than I expected. Anyway, good for her. So we want to make sure that you're maintaining safe operating standards based on Cherokee Nation direction. So as Chief said, we don't think that the vitriolic threats are typical comments from our community leaders. And so we depend on each of you, each of us, to kind of help, police these comments and alert those who make those comments of its inappropriateness, because we're all in this together. We're all Cherokees. We're all one people. We're all from one fire. As I mentioned in a recent email to each of you, organizational leaders, the Cherokee Nation takes public health paramount to our operations. So it's not political, it's science. It's more importantly, it's what's required of your organization in order to stay in good standing. We're not forcing anyone to be vaccinated, even though it has been proven to be safe and effective. We are saying you must operate according to our recommendations, which are based on Cherokee Nation Health and CDC guidelines. And those include social distancing, outdoor and larger groups, no indoor activities larger than 10 people. Everyone must wear a mask regardless of vaccination status. Every organization who is having gatherings, which we currently discourage, must publicize these requirements whenever and wherever you post the meetings, and there are no exceptions. Elders and first language speakers are especially susceptible to this virus. The vast majority of our organizations, of your organizations, are elders and cater to elders who are most vulnerable population. So we take it really seriously. And we consider any action to the contrary to be a violation of this public health policy, and your organization's funding will be reassessed. I hate being like that, but it's what we need to do to keep everyone safe. Additionally, as Brad mentioned, new construction and/or additions will now require one of the following: that the Cherokee Nation owns the property, that there be a deed restriction not less than 25 years, or there be a reversionary clause for the land no less than 25 years. Okay. We want you to send your attachments and general inquiries to cco-grants@cherokee.org, because that goes to several of us at CCO. And with that, it allows us to all know, be apprised of your situation and your documentation. So you are all heroes of the community in regards of distributing food and supplies, and in many cases, saving lives. And we appreciate that very much. You put yourself in harm's way to take care of your communities. That's what Cherokees do, and you've done that admirably. So I will say, before I turn it back over to Brad, be safe, socially distance, get vaccinated if possible, wear a mask, vaccinated or not, and be kinder. But don't. Brad?
Hello, Kevin. All right, we've had a few questions throughout the time here. We've had some people typing in the chat. So I'm going to try to answer some of those that haven't been answered yet. We had somebody that was asking about the community work grant and the amount. The community work grant does not have a limit to the amount that you can request, although we do have a limit to the amount of funds that are available to us. So just keep that in mind. Normally when we do community work grants, whether it's remodeling, if it's building a new building, we have to do large projects in phases because we have to spread that money out over several different organizations. So there's no limit to what you can ask for. Just know that if it's approved, it may not be approved for the entire amount this year. It may be have to be done in phases. I have some questions about the
We will just
eligibility for sustainability.
Just send those questions about land ownership or land rights to me. Okay.
Yeah. If you have questions about your eligibility due to land situations, please just email Kevin-Stretch@cherokee.org, and he'll get with you on that. The deadline for this year's reporting is September 30th. If you have some issues with not being able to complete it by September 30th, just give me a call and we'll talk about that.
Including if you're not able to spend all your money, correct, Brad?
Yeah, and we realize that the money for people that put in to visit their sister communities is not, it's not safe to do that right now. So we will keep that in mind. I have a question about other Lynn, I will email you here in just a little bit about your question. And again, any of the questions about land, please send to Kevin-Stretch@Cherokee.org, and we will deal with those as they come. Other questions? See a couple on the Q&A here.
Let me add one more thing on the land.
Okay.
You know, it makes good business sense for the Cherokee Nation to want to have a little bit more ownership of these buildings that we're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in. So we want to make sure that they're viable for the community for years to come, and we don't want any issues regarding that. So I think this is common sense, and it makes really good sense to me. So no.
Yeah, we understand that there are supply issues, ordering issues, and shipping issues. That's why if you're having that sort of issue, just please let us know that you haven't received everything. We really just need a receipt. So if you've already ordered and paid for that, you can send us the receipt for stuff, even if it hasn't physically gotten to you yet. Had a couple questions in the question answer. How do organizations lease property from Cherokee Nation? Just contact Kevin about that again. Any questions about land? If we were approved last year for a remodel but has not happened, do we need to reapply? No, if you applied last year under the Sustainable Communities Grant, but you haven't been funded yet, we will take a look. We're continuing to look at those applications as they come in, and we'll just continue to look at those. You don't have to reapply. You might remind me that you did apply so that I can check on the status of that. Are any of us available to assist with applications? We can assist with our grant applications. And if it's another grant application, it just depends on the application and if we have any knowledge of that. I would suggest possibly contacting, if it's a federal grant that you're trying to apply for, you might contact the Cherokee Nation Grants Department. They may have more assistance on federal grants. If you apply for COTTA, are you restricted from applying for community work? No. As long as you have worked with us for more than 2 years, you can apply for the COTTA grant and the community work grant at the same time. Right, grants, I will be sending out the I'll be sending out the grant applications on September 30th so that you can, well, actually I'll be sending them out before then, but you can turn them in beginning October 1st. That's when you can start. Can I touch on the limits of COTTA for 5 years? Yeah, the COTTA grant, if you've gotten it for 5 years, it begins to decrease in amounts after 5 years. So it decreases 25% every year after that. And the reasoning for that is that we're hoping that people will learn from us about that sort of thing and figure out how to do their own fundraising, and maybe even possibly apply for bigger grants to help with different projects. And so we do that so that other people can start applying, and we can spread the money out to as many organizations as possible. There's a thing about, can community work grant monies be used by supplies that may be used in disaster or storm? not community work. Community work grant is for building. If you were going to build a storm shelter, of course, you can use that money for that. For supplies and different things like that that are going to stay with your organization, you would need to put that in your COTTA application. Just know that those things can be available for people to use at your building. You just can't give them out to people. That's what we mean when we say direct supplies. If you're going to give blankets and coats and stuff out to community members for them to keep, those would have to be purchased with your general fund monies or through a fundraiser. But any supplies that are going to be kept at the building for the organization to use, for people to use while they're in the building, then that can be purchased with COTTA funds.
I would like to mention that we've been working for several months to get our applications digitized online. And recently we've had difficulty finalizing that. We're this close to having that where we can do it online, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen for a while. So that's why we're returning to paper forms and online forms. Paper forms. And so we apologize for not getting that, not making that happen, but the wheels just turn slowly on this. So in the future, though, you can fill it out online. Submit your paperwork online. All right, Brad. To answer Jeff's questions, yes, we're always going to take into consideration that if you're closed because we've required it, then we're always looking to fund to help you overcome those funding losses.
Someone asked, can we still get PPE for our communities?
Absolutely. If you just email cco-grants@cherokee.org and tell them you need some COVID juice, is what we call it, COVID spray, as well as other PPE, masks, we can take care of you. Okay.
All righty.
Go ahead, Brad. It looks
I
like
don't see any other questions. If you have any other questions that you didn't get in, or if you have questions that we ask you to email to a specific person, please do so. And if you have questions about grants for the next week, just go ahead and get hold of Vince or Savannah, because I'm not going to be here. I'm going to take some days off. So, but
just for a week, not forever.
Honestly, I have my phone on anyway, so I'll just answer and tell you to call Vince or Savannah or Kevin.
We'll be here.
All righty.
Well, don't let God.
Well, do. If you have any other questions, please shoot us an email. Thanks everybody for being here.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Go to Dago Hai.